What a sleeper hit. Hey everyone, what up? Kaiser here. Now, welcome to my very own review of Scarlet Nexus. You've guys seen my thoughts on the demo, and now here are my thoughts on the full game. Now, Scarlet Nexus is an action JRPG made by Bandai Namco Studios, Tose Co. Limited, and is directed by Kenji Anabuki. And it's currently available on PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC via Steam. We'll be talking about the PC version for this review alone. So what's the story for Scarlet Nexus? Well, it's set in the far future where humanity has developed technology and found a substance dormant in human brains that has given them psionic abilities and powers known as psionics. But that unfortunately has gained the attention of the others, dangerous, mindless and deformed mutant creatures that come from the extinction belt high up in the sky with the intention of devouring brains. To combat this new threat, a military organization has been formed comprised of beings with psionics called the Other Suppression Force, or OSF for short, and you have the option to play as either Yuito Sumeragi, a naive carefree boy who volunteered on joining the OSF after an OSF member saved him as a kid and has recently become a new recruit, or Kasane Randall, a cold and calculated girl who has been scouted ever since she was a child and became an elite member who recently graduated the top of her class. Both of them will join their own team and go on missions, taking down the others, while also uncovering strange mysteries of the world that could possibly lead to its very end. Now that is the summary of it, and while the first few parts start very slow, when you get past through the fourth phase or fourth chapter, things start to get very dramatic, interesting, wild, and even complex all the way to the very end. Now both Yuito and Kasane have their own roots, with them experiencing the events from their own perspective, and instances where both one would experience something completely different to the other one experiencing also something very different in their eyes. Now there are moments where both stories do overlap around the very small parts of the middle and towards the end, but I think the structure of both routes is handled very well opposed to games like Tales of Exilia or even the first two routes of Nier Automata. There are just tons of moments I just found engaging and very emotional in both stories, and by the end, I was just left satisfied with a fantastic journey from start to finish, all helped by the wonderful cast of characters who are very memorable, full of personality, filled with motives and even having depth, whether it be during the course of the narrative or Bond episodes. More on that later. Both protagonists, Yuito and Kasane, are really great characters, each with their own goals, personalities, and interactions with the rest of the cast. This game also sports a very great antagonist. In terms of graphics and overall aesthetic, Scarlet Nexus is one of the best JRPGs in terms of just overall looks. Running on the Unreal Engine 4, which I've explained in the past of why it's a good engine. The city's environments are varied with some pretty visuals, and the same applies for the character designs, each of them sporting a look that is very anime, which I really love. As for the others, all of them look very grotesque, disgusting and downright hideous, thanks to an independent artist that drawn the designs for these things. In terms of performance, I ran this on the PC with a 1980-1080p resolution with 60 FPS, and it just ran pretty smooth, with few instances of frame drops. This game also does have two types of cutscenes. The first one of which is fully animated with the in-game graphics, which is very pleasing on the eyes. But the second one shows a manga-style brain memory with shots and stills and characters taking portraits. Now, this one has gained a decisive response among people who saw it, with some people admiring it and others thinking that it looks very cheap or is just a result of time constraints, debating whether or not this game was rushed or just didn't have that much of a budget. Personally, I don't think those cutscenes were made just because of particular reasons. If anything, I believe it was more of a stylistic choice, something akin to Bayonetta using a film filter or Gravity Rush using its comic book panels. And to be honest, they aren't really that bad, especially when they're rendered in-engine, complete with the cosmetics you obtained. A neat attention to detail, if you ask me. And where I personally like this style, some may not enjoy it that much. Now we move on to the gameplay. So Scarlet Nexus, as I said, is a real-time action JRPG. And not only are Yuito and Kasane's stories more or less different in a sense, but they also play different, with Yuito opting to use his sword for fast and close quarters combat, while Kasane with a multi-hit aerial knives, and while may not be as fast as Yuito, is more suited for crowd control and has a stronger emphasis on aerial combat. Both of them have a normal and heavy attack, with the weapons as well as also dodging. They can even do a perfect dodge, which, timed right, can also perform a counterattack on enemies or throw back enemy projectiles. But their main power is psychokinesis, the ability to throw inanimate objects nearby to enemies using their mind by pressing the right trigger. There are also special objects to use by psychokinesis that are either bigger, longer, or heavier that can deal tons of damage and knock down an enemy by using the right trigger. Once activated, it will transition you to a quick-time event and prompt you to use a particular button and action at the same time, very quickly. Doing it at the right time completes the attack, while failing just ends it. You also have a big purple bar that is your psychokinesis gauge, and how much it reduces every time you spend using psychokinesis till eventually runs out. The way it's restored is by doing different types of attacks during battle, or it will instantly refuel after the end of a battle. The next and exciting thing about Scarlet Nexus is of course the Struggle Arms system, or SAS for short. What it does is let you temporarily use abilities from party members for a limited time, and the usage will stop when the gauges will be empty, or you can manually cancel them, and they will charge over time. Each ability gives you different and optional approaches, as well as instances where they can be situational, utilizing the player to use them. Powers like Hanabi's pyrokinesis, converting attacks to be fire-based and inflicting burn on enemies, especially on ones covered in oil, to do a lot of damage. Or in a different case, Shiden's electrokinesis, converting attacks to be more electricity-based and using to shock and stun enemies, which is very useful on enemies covered in water. There's also Lucas teleportation that lets you teleport across certain areas, but also can be useful to close in on enemies. Kagero's invisibility allows you to turn invisible and perform a backstab for a sneak attack. Gamma-scalekinesis, I think that's how you say it, allows to render your body to be immune to damage for a while. Kyoka's duplication allows you to multiply the objects you throw using psychokinesis, as well as making copies of yourself to attack alongside you. And Tsugumi's clairvoyance allows you to see through enemies that are invisible and can perform a special attack when you do a perfect dodge on enemies. Each of them is very fun to use, and the more you progress through the story like in Bond events, or learn skills in Brain Map, more on that later, the usage of all abilities of SAS is upgraded. Stuff like increasing time of SAS or using visions, while lets you also use projections of party members, ones that can protect you, extend the combo, or even a QTE to stun an enemy. There is also the Brain Crush, where whenever enemies have a yellow bar beneath the health bar, the crush, that which is called the crush meter, to deplete it, you need just to attack the weak spots of the enemies quickly, and when it's drained, the brain pops up, prompting you to use the left trigger and insta-kill them, with a satisfying animation to boot. Though with the cases of bosses having them, they just take a lot of damage, and a crush gauge can also replenish over time, so please make usage of that. Lastly, there's the Brain Drive and Brain Field. There's a small gauge with drive that increases whether you deal damage or take damage, and when it's full, you wear your hoodie over your head, showing a digital mask, creating a small explosion, and then things start to get really hectic, as drive increases your attack speed and movement, but also reduces the cost of psychokinesis, and also the music is sped up. The drive will drain over time during battle, and now we enter the brain field. During your progress and when you are in drive mode, you will get a notification on when to activate the brain field with a circle by using the two thumbsticks. This allows you to turn the battlefield into a distorted with tons of objects flying to crush enemies. The only downside is there are instances where your brain starts hurting and loses control for a bit, and you have 30 seconds till the brain field is gone, but you have to turn it off manually before it reaches 0, otherwise you die and get a game over. All of these mechanics are very fun to use and very deep, giving you time to unleash so many cool combos and experiment in mechanics. And they also get very deep thanks to the Brain Map, which is this game's skill tree. This allows you to spend brain points on skills each time you level up, and a lot of them involve buffing, double jumping, and adding more moves to your base combos, or other mechanics including to use up to 4 SAS links simultaneously. The menu also has the options of customizing your character's equipment, looks, and party member behavior, or removing them completely if you want to go alone. It honestly looks pretty nice. Occasionally you'll run to our vendor Satori the Archivist, where you can shop to buy or sell items, cosmetics, weapons, or exchange materials to get them as well as gifts. Now, in terms of scope, Scarlet Nexus is somewhat linear, with a few areas being kinda open to explore. And while I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker, exploration is somewhat lacking in some parts, considering how story driven this game is. But that said, I don't mind it. You also have a world map to fast travel to any location you want, and which areas you already explored. For my playthroughs, I played on Yuito doing a normal difficulty and Kasane on harder. And I will tell you from my experience, as playing as Yuito for my first time, the difficulty spike does increase very quickly, as you'll encounter through tough encounters of dangerous others and bosses that really will test your knowledge and even patience. And while some instances can get annoying, the game overall just gave me a fun challenge for both routes, with some bosses really keeping on my toes, and the final boss was just overall a highlight and a great way to end the game. After you complete a phase, being a chapter of the story, you will enter a standby phase, more like an intermission, and you'll be spending in your hideout talking to your party members, and some of them will be available to bond during Bond episodes, akin to Persona's social links and Fire Emblem supports. These will let you learn about the Pi members, what their goals are, and the interactions they share with you. There are instances where some of them are just playable to do a mission. After that, the bond of the characters will increase, and so will the effects, increasing time for SAS or divisions. You can also increase their bonds by giving them gifts after crafting them from the vendor, which raises their affinity level. You can also even talk to them through brain message, which is basically texting, and they also share their own style of bonding with the other Pi members from the other team. Once you're all done with that, you can then rest and proceed to the next phase. And I honestly think it's a fun break from the story, and even if there are a lot of Bond episodes to go through. There are 12 phases for both characters, with 11 standby phases. Honestly, if there's one thing that I'm not a fan of, it's the side quests. They are scattered through NPCs, and only amount to just killing others by some sort of method like a challenge, and they don't really contribute to the story, world, lore, or anything. In fact, I did 2 of them for both routes, and never touched the rest, because they're just so forgettable, and I just managed to beat the campaigns just fine on its own, really. The soundtrack of Scarlet Nexus is pretty good, with lots of variations: electro, dubstep, rock, J-pop, techno, jazz, and other instruments and vocals all merged to make a pretty stellar soundtrack. Some of the exploration themes are just downright pleasant, and the battle and boss themes are just bangers. Now, when it comes just to overall content, after you beat one route or do both, you unlock special side quests that will grant you special weapons for the Pi members. And there's also a New Game Plus mode called EX New Game, which after you beat one side, you can transfer your levels, items, and progress to the next route. Campaign-wise, both of them are about 30 hours or so, and I spent about a total of 52 hours completing both, and was just left satisfied with the overall experience. That concludes my review of Scarlet Nexus. I had a fantastic time playing it and loved everything it had to offer. The visuals are amazing, the story was good, the characters are excellent, the music was stellar, and the combat was superb. It's definitely a sleeper hit, as well as a wonderful JRPG. Only gripe I just had was the lackluster side quests, but that just really was the only problem. This was a game I was looking forward to since it was revealed last year, and with the people working on it, that just completely caught my interest. Proud to say, it did not disappoint me in the absolute slightest. I would be on board if this game got a sequel, because I think it has the potential of getting it. Overall, I give Scarlet Nexus 4 Baki dolls out of 5. So, have you played Scarlet Nexus? What did you think of it? Let me know down in the comments below. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, so punch that like button, drop down a comment, and click that subscribe button if you're new. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Mad Kaiser, out.